Today we're talking about my favorite class with lots of PDR, magical spells, and sheer brute strength. This is the Cleric. Alright, so first off, I have over 1,000 hours on the Cleric, and I've been playing since playtest 1. Now, we're not going to be talking about any of these other builds like Paladin, No Spell Cleric, or even the Staff Master. We're simply going to be talking about the classic normal Cleric. The first thing I want to talk about is going to be which abilities and spells you should be using. Right now, I do believe the priority should be Judgment, if not Smite. Judgment is especially good if you are going to build tanky. Other abilities like Divine Protection can be used, but it is mainly for stuff like Paladin or the No Spell Cleric. They're simply just not as good right now, in my opinion. That is alone. As for perks, Protection from Evil and Perseverance are a must-have no matter what. Other things like Blunt Weapon Mastery has been debuffed recently, but I still think it is a must-have. And personally, I really like Faithfulness for the extra magical damage, but it's up to you. The other options are not the greatest. I do think that Advanced Healer can be very useful for the extra magical healing so that you can get some bigger heals in. This is especially useful for team fights or if you're going to play a more supportive role. The same goes for Overhealing or even Kindness. The rest of them are just sadly not really in the meta, but I do recommend always staying updated to the current meta and watching updates that come out. I don't make videos like that on my channel, but you can watch things like One Peg. Alright, so I went ahead and made this little tier list. S is going to be fights that you want to take, and D is going to be the fights that you do not want to take. So as a Cleric, the fights that you are most likely going to win are going to be against a fighter and a rogue. Rogues, you'll be one-shotting or two-shotting depending on their gear, and if you're landing headshots, the fight is over very quickly. As for fighters, you will beat them relatively easy as long as you're landing your magical spells. If you get a Judgment off or a Holy Strike or even a few of them, the fight is already decided and you'll probably just 2 or 3 tap the fighter. Alright, so during this other example, I went ahead and started off the fight with a Judgment. The fight ended up going for way longer than expected, and I ended up getting my 30-second cooldown done and using another Judgment, and it won me the fight. Your biggest advantage against fighters is your magical damage, so make sure during PDR fights you are always taking advantage of this. This especially goes for if you have PDR yourself. PDR versus PDR, and the fact that you have magic, you'll definitely win the fight. Warlocks, you have a huge advantage because of the skill that I mentioned earlier. They can still be annoying because they can run away really fast, constantly keep spawning Hydras and leeching off them and being really annoying, but you should be able to win the fight relatively easy if you can get him into a corner and win the fight. So during this example with the Warlock, I was actually fighting a Ranger at first, and when I started fighting the Ranger, quickly a Warlock came behind me and it became a 2v1. One was just attacking me from one side, the other was attacking from the other side. I went ahead and landed a Judgment, and if it was just a 1v1 right here, I would have killed the Ranger right here. But instead, I'm not going to force the fight. Instead, I choose to back up and I place a campfire down. And as soon as I thought the fight was over, and as soon as I got my spells back, which is the most important thing, I headed back into the fight. As you can see, the Warlock won, and I went ahead and started forcing the Warlock back, landed a Holy Strike. He was trying to back up. I don't know how exactly low he was, but I ended up landing another Holy Strike. And this is where you'll see a little bit of a technique from me. A good way to practice using Holy Strikes is practicing your levels, how to aim them. The same can be done with under something. You can place Holy Strikes under different items and across the room. You got to practice knowing the maps where you can place them. Right here, I get a Judgment off, and then I finish the fight off with my mace. Rangers and Druid I believe to be an equal class to the Cleric. A Ranger can run really fast, place traps, and constantly keep kiting, and this can create a big problem for a Cleric because of the move speed difference usually, but they're not the hardest class to fight. Now right here in this fight, you can see right off the bat I land a Judgment through the door. This is one of my favorite techniques, and if you're not using this as a Cleric with your Judgment, you are losing out on so much damage that you could be winning so many fights with. He is way more geared than me, but he runs for so long that I end up getting another Judgment and finishing off the fight. Now, Druids have not really been the hardest, but I'm gonna keep them B tier because I don't really think I've had enough fights with Druids to say which tier they're in, so I'm gonna leave this one up to you guys. Let me know what you guys think down below. One tip I do have is that you should always carry a fire throw bowl for their raffle. Easy kills. All right, so our first example, this guy was running for a very long time. I had to chase him. I Judgment already and hit him once. Now I land a second Judgment and another 2 hits, and the fight is over. Cards aren't super tanky, but it it can take a while to catch up to them. This is a great example of a OP bard. This bard is running for me, using his speed advantage against me. He stops for a second to close the door, and this is where I land a judgment. He hits me a couple times, and that's okay, but then I go ahead and repot up. This guy was extremely more geared than me, and I just had a budget magic kit. I get 2 more hits, last one being a headshot, and the fight is over. Now for the Barbarian fight, this is one of your toughest fights that you're going to face as a Cleric, in my opinion, because they got Francesca axes, they are very tanky, lots of HP. They also have Iron Will, so this makes them a pretty tough matchup, but in my opinion, easier than Wizard. So in this example, he starts rushing me with Crush, I land a Holy Strike, and then a Judgment, and as you can see, I'm just constantly trying to dodge attacks. That's one of the biggest things you can do against a Barbarian, is learn how to dodge their attacks, know all their weapons. And if you know how to dodge your attacks properly, keep distance, and keep that distance for yourself to use magical attacks, then it's an easy win for you. So right here, I run through the door and I bait him. And by doing this, I get a double hit on him. Because of his slow attacks, it's also good to just constantly keep running, keeping distance. And he hit the door. And because he's focusing on speed, I knew that he would put his weapon away and I would get an easy double hit. After this, the fight's pretty much over. He runs. Sadly, he was trying to run up on, do some parkour thing, but he messed up. And so I ended up winning the fight relatively easy after that. But yeah, just block attacks with your shield. That is one of the best things you can do. Keeping distance, using your magical power, and then eventually winning with your mace. Your hardest matchup is going to be Wizard and Barbarian. If you're building PDR, Wizard will hard counter you, and the magical damage will hurt. I recommend only taking a fight with the Wizard if the fight is very close ranged, and it's going to be tough for the Wizard to kite you. If it's an open area, you're going to lose.